Shalom, shalom everyone. Baruchot habaot, baruchim habaim. I'm a proud member of the IJS fan club. I remember offering and holding space during the COVID pandemic times. And here we are holding space during times that are unimaginable. And as much as you may need, as we all need, to connect to the deeper part of ourselves and each other, I really need to connect with you now. I really, really do. It's where we find inspiration, hope, optimism. Before I start the teaching that I'd like to share and then move into the sit, I'm just feeling very emotional right now. It's just very, it's a real honor to be with all of you. I'm starting a course, 8-week course this Monday, the 23rd, a week from yesterday, through AJS, Applied Jewish Spirituality. And it's titled Practice the Practice, Quieting the Mind. And I promise you, when Rav Daniel Silverstein and I went over my courses for this year, I always believed it's important to quiet the mind, always. Now, I would urge all of you to consider, first of all, what it would be like for you personally to experience quieting down your minds. And what I'm doing is I'm offering the first class at no charge as a gift. Try it out. I believe Jeff's going to put the links to either register for the course or to try out the first class at no charge. I really have something special to share. I really, really do. And I invite you to hold space, to consider that and show up for the first class. And then you'll see if you'd like to continue or not. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, this is the week of the flood. This is the week of the flood. We learn actually in the beginning in Genesis 6:16, when Moses is, I'm also writing a book, so my mind is somewhere else in the book with the parshiot, but please forgive me for maybe not being as sharp as I usually am. I have to just tell you, I'm worried. I'm so worried for my granddaughter. I want to dedicate this gathering, Talia, Ne'ima, Bat, Gila, Shmuela, Asher Yitzchak. She is an officer in search and rescue. She's not even 21 years old. She's in Zikim, which is one of the most dangerous places right on the border, Gaza. And her boyfriend is already in a tank, Yovel. May the two of them come home safe and sound, and all the soldiers, and may the abductees be found and be returned, and may all those who have perished through the merit of us sharing Torah and our own mindful practice, may their souls soar even higher than to places we don't even know about that they've already soared to. So yes, Noah is commanded, Noach, to make the ark. And in the ark, he's told to make a tzohar. Tzohar ta'aseh l'teva. Make a window, a skylight. There's even a midrash that says it's this illuminating precious stone that shines light. Basically, there needs to be a light in the ark. And then in the next chapter, in the very beginning, it's time. The floodwaters are rising. V'yomer Hashem leNoach, and the Lord says, the Eternal says to Noach, it's time. Ata u'kol beitecha, you and your household, your family, Bo el hateva, come into the ark. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that the word teva normally translates here as ark, but can also mean word. So what he does is, if you look at the source sheet, the first verse that I share, Tzohar ta'aseh l'teva, make a tzohar for the teva, this skylight, this window. He reverses it. The masters, the Hasidic masters, love to reverse, to bring. It's a way of interpreting. So he reverses the order of the above quoted verse, and he understands the verse to mean, instead of let there be a tzohar for the teva, may the teva be made into where there's an illumination. May the word, our words illuminate, radiate light. I would argue that this type of light conveys the sense of clarity, the sense of spiritual illumination, the sense of awareness, of muda'ut, or kishivut in modern Hebrew. The phrase, even when we say in English, oh, I see what you mean, captures this deeper understanding of light. Chevre, I will tell you now, there was so much darkness. There was so much darkness. There's so much confusion. We really don't know from moment to moment what the next moment will be. We need that Sohar. We need our words to reveal, to manifest clarity and light. Shlomo HaMelech teaches, King Solomon in Shir HaShirim, in 8:7, the 8th chapter, 7th verse. Many waters will never be able to extinguish the love. It's embedded in our spiritual DNA. Mayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ava. This refers to the love for the divine, meaning the divine that dwells within us, our soul, our spirit, the deepest part of ourselves. No matter what happens around us, what King Solomon is suggesting and believes is that nothing that surrounds us can compromise, God forbid, can extinguish this deep internal love. The Balatanya, the first Rebbe of Chabad, writes, and he teaches a deeper meaning of what the many waters, the Mayim Rabim, what does that mean? It refers to our preoccupation, our anxieties, our worries with earthly matters, financial sustainability, health-related issues, family and other relationship issues, and now the many waters. What's happening with us here? What's going to be? It's an existential crisis. It's like in the week of the flood. In the week we feel the flood waters are rising. We do have faith. We do. I've never seen the amount of unity that is being displayed between the Haredim and the secular, between the older and the younger. It is just remarkable. Story after story after story. And the waters are rising. The stories, the funerals, the shiva calls, the horrendous finding out what really was going on. There are many, these are the many today, the many and mighty waters that are causing us, many of us, to actually forget the needs of our soul, our spiritual side, the non-physical dimension in all of this. And now with the horror, with the trauma, with the shock, we need to go in and do the inner work more than ever. So how do we survive? How do we do this? The great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, teaches us, lo lehityaesh, do not despair. We cannot give up. Even one person was asked on the news who was able to escape from one of the kibbutzim, and he was asked by the news reporter, where will you live now? He said, where will I live? I'm returning to the kibbutz. More than ever before, more than ever, I need to return home when the war is over. We are not a people who give up. The words of the Torah will guide us, will nourish us, and heal us. More practically speaking, this parsha teaches us to come into the ark, in order to save us from drowning in the many waters of a sense of being overwhelmed, of confusion, of shock. Sometimes I even find myself as I walk to the shuk or go to Pardes or visit my family, what is really going on? When the Creator invites us to come into the ark, come into the Teva, it can be understood through the Baal Shem Tov's teaching, come into the word of prayer. Come into the word. There, for a moment, you will find tranquility. You will find that the many waters will not extinguish your eternal flame. Your Eish, your Nikudah, your Nitzotz, your spark, your love for the divine in you and the divine in each other. And then you will be safe from drowning. How do we go about entering this ark? We dedicate time to go into our word of prayer. It could be, and right now more people are going to the synagogue to pray in community. It could be dedicating time in the morning by oneself in contemplative, meditative practice. It could be going for a walk where there's more nature, like on the beach or in the woods. I'm sitting out in my garden and meditating more. And it could be a combination of a hitbodedut, of a hitbonenut, of a tefillah b'tzibor, or praying from the siddur, but alone. And I would just like to suggest that we really give space for each other, to really give space to do how each one believes the person needs to come into their ark. One of the students, one of the Hasidim of the Maggid of Mezerich, Reb Zev Wolf of Zitamar, taught. He takes the pasuk where Noach is told by God, by the Eternal, take of everything that is eaten and store it away to serve as food for you and for them. And I want to conclude this sharing. He interprets that to mean that this hints to the various possibilities of awakening our own inner service of prayer. There's so many different ways. However, this is not the time to judge. It's really never the time to judge, but this is a time to unite. For some, it may be eating this kind of a food spiritually. For others, it may be eating that kind of a type of a food. We all need to come into our teva, into our word. And let us really, as we move into our sit now, for 10 minutes of silence together, as we receive the breath of life, let's honor our own lives right now and hold that breath for a moment and feel alive. Feel alive, and then return that breath with gratitude. And by us doing that together, we are connecting together in our own personal and private silent space. So I invite us now to sit together in quiet, quieting the mind. Plug for my class. Let's quiet our minds together. We'll begin as we receive the first breath together. And as we're drawing to a close, I invite you to gently join with me in closing with 3 cleansing, deep, connecting with life-giving, life-affirming, life-blessing cycles of receiving, holding, returning, and holding breathing cycles. So good to breathe. Toda lukulam. Thank you so much for joining me. Toda.
Yiscah. And I invite you to stay in just a moment. We'll have a chance to reflect a little bit and ask questions of Yiscah and have a little conversation. If you're leaving now, we should say Tchem Shalom, farewell, and hope you'll join us back either tonight for a special event or tomorrow at this time or whenever you can join us. And we're going to now have a chance for those who are remembering loved ones or others to say Kaddish. We'll put the text of Kaddish up on the screen. You're welcome to join in with me and unmute yourself. And please, in the chat, you can add the name of anyone you are holding in heart or mind today, if you'd like to as well. So we'll let everybody, anyone who wants to unmute, and you can join in reciting Kaddish with me. Yitkadal, Alaman, Yamli, Yechon, Yorechon, Yed, Agala, Ishmei,
Amen.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the practice, and thank you, Yiscah, for always your incredible teaching, and that's so particularly moving right now in a different way. You know, we've been on this sit before, but not in this way. So I'm just grateful for your honesty. And we were chatting before we got on. Just being able to share your own vulnerability here, and I'm so glad that this community can be a source of support. I know for myself, that in times when I'm feeling particularly broken, the gift as a teacher of Torah to be able to teach is just extremely nourishing. So I'm glad that we could be that for you today. So
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the gift with us. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Like, what's the conversation that you have at this point? But I guess, the obvious question to me really is, I'm curious to reflect for you, or to invite you to reflect on what your practice has been like in the last 10 days. I wrote to a teacher of mine who I don't know personally. I just know her recordings. I really enjoy listening to her at like 5:30 in the morning with my coffee and doing my sit. And And I wrote to her the other day that, I really was noticing that the quality of my practice right now, I'm not dropping into a place, that's like sort of that deeper place, but it's helpful for calming the body, the mind from the sort of the constant, this, the agitation that's always present. I wonder what it's like for you. And if you want to reflect on that a little bit, and anybody else as well. So
Yeah, well, I'd be honored to share that, what it's been like for me. I went into this war quite, as we would say, vatik, like I'm very experienced with wars in Israel. This is not my first. The fact that it's the first for my 3- and 4-year-old grandchildren, that is causing me more of a problem than me alone. I was here during the 73 Yom Kippur War when I knew I was going to make Aliyah. I was working on kibbutz, and I was actually at the Kotel on Yom Kippur when the sirens went off. So there was that war in 1973. Then having children many years later, living in the Jewish quarter in 1991 with the Gulf War crisis, when we weren't sure when Saddam Hussein was going to fire the missiles, whether there would be chemical warheads or not. And I remember my children when the sirens would go off. We didn't have the mamad, the built-in safe rooms. We had to make safe rooms within our homes. And I was with my daughter this past Simchat Torah, and when the sirens went off, and I said, "Do you remember when you were little?" She said, "Yes." So the next generation has been through this with me, but it was different then. It was different then than in 1973. It was a different type of a war. This is very, very different, though. The unimaginable, the absolute unimaginable has occurred. Warfare is not new to Israel, fighting to survive, fighting for who we are, fighting to secure our homeland for us who live here and for Jews all over the world. This is not new. But what made this very new for me is the presence of social media and the immediacy of information that's available. That adds to the sense of being overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So I have this struggle with me each morning. Part of my practice is to hold that. Do I put the news on or not? No, do I call my daughter up first and then my son or not? Or do I just sit in the unknown or not? And it's hard. I feel responsibility as a parent, as a savta, a grandparent. I have all these grandchildren. I have my students at Pardes. I have my community members. There's all different drives and things that we're doing. I feel I have to know what's going on. I'm responsible. And yet I don't want to know what's going on. I know enough what's going on. So that's part of what I sit with. Part of my sit is just to bring some sense of tranquility in the unknown. Mm-hmm. And that did not happen. I mean, I wasn't committed to dedicated practice in 1991 or 1973 the way I am now, but there was less to be. I wasn't as overwhelmed. I mean, I was afraid, but now there's just so much like this, which allows this for us. So it's not all bad. I mean, there's a lot of good also. So that's part of my practice, is just trying to calm me down inside. And my practices are much more colorful. They're so less predictable. They were never really predictable, but they were more or less unless something like when my father passed away, or if a close relative is getting married, we have these points that pull our emotions in either direction, but usually it's more in the means between the extremes. This is like all the way over here. Mm-hmm. And then all the way over here, I'm experiencing anger, a sense of betrayal, of mistrust, of gratitude, of joy. It's a mix. It's a mix. It really is a mix. It's like a fruit
salad.
What do you call it?
Fruit salad.
Yeah, like a fruit salad, and it's every day it's a different fruit salad.
It's like a teva that has all of the animals inside of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to different compartments. I
Yeah.
think the most important common denominator to my practice in general is that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm showing up without any expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that answers.
It resonates. There's a question here. Mir asked, how can we use the light or the word, the Zohar or the Teva, I guess, to deal with those who blame Israel? Yeah. And so I won't offer a Rashi on that question. I'll let the question speak for itself. So I wonder what you think, and also what others think in this. In the chat, how do we, what are your own sources of light and using light to respond to perceived darkness? I guess I am offering a little Rashi here.
Whatever darkness I sense is like a dark cloud is hovering over Israel right now. People who are blaming us, they're living in a darker cloud.
Yeah.
If what I said in the beginning of the teaching, that the word, may the word give light, it's a sense of clarity, it's a sense of awareness. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm also have my own emotions that come up, like I feel abandoned by the world or some parts of the world. But again, in 1973, this happened in the Yom Kippur War. It was the same thing. The way the world did not even pay attention in many cases. It was really hard then. I was much younger. I was much younger. I didn't have the resources. There's a lot of darkness in the world. The whole world is coming out of a pandemic. People really, it's part of human nature to seek out someone to blame for when there's trauma. I think that's part of coming to make sense. It's not the first time the victim has been blamed, victim blaming. I find it sad. I cry over it. I'm angry with it. I don't have a clear answer. But what I have asked people that live outside of Israel, when people ask, what can we do? This is what you can do. When you're confronted by it, speak to it. Really speak to it. And whether it's educating, whether it's chatting, whether it's like really, like you need to know what's really going on before you can even posture something like that. Like, I really think it's up to Jews all over the world to really push back on that, as I can from here, when I can.
I'll share that yesterday, someone mentioned in the chat that there was a boy, a 6-year-old Palestinian boy who was killed, was murdered brutally by, his name, Wadea Al-Fayoume, was murdered by his landlord in suburban Chicago, about an hour from my house. And it was horrible. And his mother, was, horribly injured. It was a stabbing attack, and she was horribly injured defending him. And the landlord's not Jewish, thank God, but it's being investigated as a hate crime. And yesterday, about this time, I got an email from my friend who's the head of the Chicago Board of Rabbis, saying that they actually were asking interfaith leaders to come to the funeral. And so I texted her. I said, if you're going, I'll get a ride, and put on a suit. And I was out the door. And there were about 5 of us who were rabbis who were there. And there were probably 3,000 people, is what it felt like at this funeral, in a mosque, overflowing. There were people outside, doing the service as well. And I had no fear about it. It didn't even cross my mind before I got in the car. And then my mind settled, and I was like, oh, what's the source of the information that they want interfaith people, leaders there and whatever. But, I checked that out. And when I got there, first of all, I want to say, number one, I was welcomed warmly and treated as an honored guest. And number two, I went out of my way. Usually I wear a black kippah, but I wore my Yom Kippur kippah, which is a white kippah, because I wanted people to know. I wanted to be conspicuous. And the number of people who came over to me, dozens of people came over. Thank you for being here. Shook my hand, gave me a hug, etc. And it was very reaffirming that, even at this time, it became very politically, there was no question it was politically charged. There were lots of Palestinian flags that were there. This is a huge Palestinian neighborhood. And yet, being able to show up there, it was unquestionably to me what I felt called to do and the right thing to do. And in a moment when I feel so powerless, I can't just step out and drive an hour and be with you, Yiscah, or with my brother and sister-in-law, or my 4 nieces and nephews who are, fighting in the IDF right now. It was, the least, I really felt like it was the least thing that I could do. And just to offer the affirmation that I really, really believe, first of all, I shared some of this on Facebook. Number one, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of people just want to be able to live peacefully together and raise their children and, live in their communities peacefully. I really believe that. And second is, and that we should remember that. And second is that a lot of people, many people, I think, in the Palestinian community are being fed an entirely different news diet. It is something, it's the exact same phenomenon that's happened in the American far right, where, October 7th is like January 6th, there was no violence. 1948 is like 2020. It's illegitimate and it never happened. And we're not going to treat it as though it's real. And so I, and that's very frightening. And yet it's also something that, we see all over. And so I just found myself, standing there knowing, number one, at moments when I felt any kind of anxiety, I was able to lean on my own practice and kept saying to myself, right? The main thing is not to make oneself more fearful, Rabbi Nachman. And number two is like fundamentally, most people are good people, and unfortunately there are some really, really bad leaders and really, really bad people who are out there. And so anyway, just if that helps to restore a little bit of faith in humanity, I hope. But it not like it's waving a magic wand, things are going to go away. But just wanted to share that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's really amazing. In 1987, when I was in the Jewish quarter at that time in the old city, when Hamas was established, there were about 100 people that they were radical as Muslims, and they never spoke on behalf of all the Arab people here in the mid. They made it clear. It was only at grassroots level at that time. There were Jewish people living in Gaza, in Gush Katif. This was in 1987. They said from day one, our only objective, they never talked about 2 states or even 1 state. Their whole agenda was to annihilate the Jewish people, not even Israelis, the Jewish people. And they've remained steadfast to their commitment. They don't speak on behalf, though, of most of the Arabs that are living here, the Palestinian, they're not. It's not a mandate. They are a terrorist mob group. And to blame Israel for, it's the living in the dark. Many people believe that they're speaking on behalf of the whole region, and they're not. We know that. You and I know that. Everyone here in the room knows that. Kol hakavod to what you did. Kol hakavod to you.
Thank you. I guess the other thing that I would say is just, just remember also, and I guess an adaptation of Lo Alecha Hamlacha Ligmor. We're not the negotiators. We're not the military planners. None of us has a fraction of any of that. And that doesn't have to be our responsibility, but, just for each of us to do what we can to take care of the people that we can, to speak words of truth and wisdom and comfort where we can. And so, Yiscah, thank you as always for sharing the light of your Torah with us. And and May we see you again soon and in more peaceful days. And
Amen.
and thank you everybody for again coming together and holding this space together. And I hope you can join us tonight. And we'll be back here tomorrow at our regular time and channel. So, all right.
Shalom, everyone. Thank you.